everybody, and welcome to the TV enthusiast discussion of Game of Thrones. Today we're going to be talking about the second episode of the 6th season of everybody's favorite swords and sorcery epic on HBO. It's a lot of qualifiers. I am your host for the evening. My name is Tyson Gifford. I am the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast, and joining me today, as always, is Will Roehrig, our keeper of comics.
Hi.
Okay, so like last week, I think I got some compliments on the kind of way we went by region, so we're going to do the same kind of thing this week. That's how we're just going to break down what's been happening. So we're going to start this week in Meereen. So there was no Dothraki Sea because there was no Daenerys in this episode, no Jorah in this episode. But we got some action with Tyrion.
Some action with Tyrion.
So one of the coolest lines in the trailer, I believe the second trailer for this season, involved somebody saying, Tyrion said, dragons don't do well in captivity. And then somebody said, how do you know that? And he said, that's what I do. I drink and I know things.
That's great. And I'm going to get a t-shirt that has that line on it.
I drink and I know things?
Yeah, drink and I know things. Yes. That's so quotable. Like, literally, I can see people like quoting that for like years.
Well, this is the episode that scene comes from. And so basically what happened was Tyrion was talking about the fact that, you know, they needed good news in Meereen. They didn't have any good news going on. And part of the bad news was that all of Slaver's Bay, except for Meereen, is back in the control of the Masters. But also, you know, they lost their ship. So everything's kind of going downhill for Daenerys's group, in Meereen. So, in order to try to kind of make some good news, Tyrion asked about the dragons, and they said, well, the dragons aren't eating. They haven't eaten since, Dany went down there. So he's like, well, we can't exactly have our mother of dragons have her dragons die. It's kind of like the symbol of our movement. So he made the decision that they needed to lessen the restrictions or altogether remove the restrictions on the dragons. And he mentioned how dragons are intelligent and they know who their friends are. And so we get an incredibly scary scene. I don't know about you, but I was like on the edge of my seat.
I was on the edge of my seat too. It was cool seeing those dragons too.
Yeah, definitely. And Tyrion approaching them. I love Tyrion's story about how he wanted a dragon when he was a boy. And, they said, well, you can't have a dragon because they're all extinct. And he said, I don't care if it's, you know, it doesn't have to be a big dragon. It can be a small one like me.
Yeah, it can be small like me. I thought that was funny.
Everybody was laughing at him but he's telling the story to the dragons and they're just kind of, looks like they're listening and they're just kind of being, you know, wary of him. They're watching him. And he takes off the chains off of one of the dragon and the other one kind of surprises him from behind, but then turns his head and offers his neck to have his chains taken off as well. So the dragons are somewhat intelligent at least. So one was able to kind of figure out that's what he wanted.
Well, Tyrion pointed that, like, according to some maesters, dragons are even more intelligent than humans.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know. So, yeah.
The dolphins of the sky.
The dolphins of the sky who can breathe fire and eat you. But that was a pretty cool, tense scene. That's pretty much all that happens in Meereen this episode, though.
You know, there's a rumor. This is one of the fan theories that there's supposed to be 3 heads of the dragon. Okay, so that's like if you've seen the Targaryen crest, it's a dragon with 3 heads.
Yep.
And there's, you know, 3 dragons on the show. And of course we've mentioned before that there's a huge fan theory, like the biggest fan theory in all of Game of Thrones fandom, that Jon Snow is in fact a Targaryen. Well, there's another one that says that Tyrion is a Targaryen, that he was, Tywin's wife was raped by, the Mad King. And that, so Tyrion there's a lot less evidence. It's not as kind of obvious as the one with Jon Snow.
I think fans just want everybody to be related to a Targaryen, like everybody.
They just want all of their favorite characters.
I like this guy. He's a Targaryen.
Yeah. Because they want them to bond with dragons, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
They want to see Tyrion riding a dragon, you know?
It's Tyrion becoming one with the dragon.
Yeah.
I think you'll get to see Tyrion ride a dragon. He does, but he's not related to a Targaryen. He just does it because he's that cool.
Yeah. What's interesting is that on the Jon Snow being a Targaryen theory, it's so obvious that if it's not real, then it's George Martin specifically fucking with fans. Like, there's no way it's an accident. He left so many breadcrumbs that it's either that it is true, or it's purposely left the breadcrumbs to fuck with people. Whereas Tyrion's connection to, if he's a possible Targaryen, is more like, well, the possibilities are there based on things characters said. Not so much like saying he is a Targaryen, but like creating the possibilities that he might be illegitimate or something like that. You know, like there are like a few things that can be interpreted that way, but they're faint enough that it could also be very much not the case.
Yeah.
Like it could not even be intentional, you know?
Right.
But yeah, that's what's, the story about, Tyrion and Meereen. He sets the dragons free. They don't leave. I don't even know if they can leave the chamber. I don't even know how they got him into that chamber.
Daenerys is the mother of dragons. She got him into that chamber.
I just don't know how they got him in, like, widthwise with the doors.
No. Apparently it's big enough. I don't know.
But they're unchained now, so Dragons Unchained. Who knows what's going to happen now? We'll have to see if that comes back. I could very well see that coming back to haunt Tyrion. It's like a very bad decision. It's setting up now like, you know, oh, well, you know, Tyrion knows what he's talking about. He's doing the right thing and this is going to pay off to his advantage. It could very well go the other way. So I wonder what's going to happen with that. It was funny seeing at the very end of the scene, Tyrion talking to Varys and saying, if I ever just come up with an idea this stupid again, punch me in the face.
Yeah, exactly. That was so bad. Along with that, I drink and I know things. Like, that was also another funny, like Tyrion did have like a lot of screen time this episode, but I thought like this episode, like his stuff was gold.
He chewed the screen he had.
Yeah.
He also had the eunuch thing where Tyrion said, if I had my penis cut off, I'd be drinking all the time. Yeah. And then like, you see, what was it? Grey Worm, the one, Unsullied, kind of shoots him a glance and he's like, sorry, you know, he makes dwarf jokes, I make eunuch jokes.
Yeah.
He's just like, I don't make any dwarf jokes. And he's like, you're thinking them.
Yeah. Them.
So yeah, Tyrion, a lot of fun scenes, but not a lot of scenes, in this episode. Kind of set up some early developments that are probably going to pay off a little bit later in the season. Next we move on to Braavos, where, again, a character who didn't have a lot of scenes, and didn't get as much to do with his scenes either, unlike Tyrion, is, Arya. So she's being attacked again. She's being beaten up by the waif again. And this time, when she's all hyper defensive and the waif's already gone, her old, buddy pops up.
Mm-hmm.
Our favorite faceless man, and starts quizzing her again. Who are you? If the girl tells me I'll give her food. If the girl tells me, I'll give her shelter.
He's like, if the girl tells me her name, I'll give her food. If the girl tells me her name, I'll give her shelter. If the girl tells me her name, I'll give her eyes back. Make it more and more tempting. And her answer each time is the girl has no name, because that's the test.
And so, yeah, he bought it and told her to follow him, and she went to grab her little tray for change, and he said, "Leave it. You're no longer a beggar." She's back with the faceless men.
Nice. Yep. So it looks like she passed the test.
At least for now. We'll see what's coming up in her path. But I know in the trailer we saw scenes of her still blind, like running and doing some parkour type stuff. So I imagine maybe that's kind of what we're going to be getting into, some of the training with that. So yeah, we'll have to see. It's kind of interesting because I thought like, oh, they're taking her back. Like I thought all that stuff was going to happen before they took her back, but they're going to, actually take her back. And then she still has those scenes coming up that we saw in the trailer of her like running through the city and stuff.
Oh,
so
I
it's just
already forgot.
part of the trailer. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. Now let's move over to where there's more stuff going on in Westeros. First stop, King's Landing. This is a funny scene. That we see the guy, and it is the guy in last season that was flashing Cersei his dick.
I was like, what? What's funny in King's Landing? I'm like, oh, yep, okay.
We saw this guy last season when Cersei was doing her shame walk, and he was like flashing his dick at her and stuff. And now here he is telling a story about how she was like winking at him, and
yeah, he's basically just bragging, like talking shit, and
he's drunk.
And I'm like, well, this is Game of Thrones. This isn't gonna end well.
Yeah, especially when they cut to him like in the alley, like peeing. It's like they're not just gonna cut to a guy in the alley peeing and have nothing happen, So he's sitting there in the alley peeing. He's drunk. You hear these really heavy clunk, clunk footsteps. He turns around, just starts peeing all over Frankenmountain's feet. It's kind of a classic scenario you see in like the movies, like the drunk guy, somebody goes up behind him and the drunk guy turns around and starts peeing all over the guy in front of him.
Yep. And then
smash,
bam. Yep, saw that coming.
Effortless head smash. Yeah,
I totally saw that coming. I'm like, yep, Game of Thrones.
That was really funny.
But let's get to the real meat of what happens at King's Landing, which is, I think, the most interesting scene is Jaime and the High Sparrow.
Oh yeah,
that was tense. I really love that encounter, especially with like, the High Sparrow is like, you'll spill blood in this holy place, and like Jaime is like, the gods spilt more. Yeah, the gods have spilt more blood than any of us, or something like that, It's
like, I like Jaime going off on the High Sparrow about, like, so are you going to arrest me? And so it's kind of like listing off some of his crimes, like the things he could be arrested for.
Yep.
Basically like challenging him. And then you see all the kind of Faith Militant come out, and Jaime's like, I thought you weren't going to spill blood, or, and he says they wouldn't be able to get to you in time. And he's like, no, they wouldn't. And you'd probably kill some of them. But that doesn't matter, because none of us matter. We're nothing. We're nobody. But together we can overthrow an empire.
Yep. Pretty much. That was a powerful scene. That was ominous. That line right there, Together we can overthrow an empire. It's like, ooh, just the chills right there. We got to see the funeral of
The viewing of
the viewing, not like the actual funeral, but the viewing. Tommen was keeping his mother locked up in the keep for fear that she'd be put back in prison by the Faith Militant.
That was a characters about to shit their pants scene too, and
yeah.
when the King's Guard were like, "We can't let you go on order of the king," and the Mountain steps forward, and they're all just like, "Okay, shit."
Yeah, they're like, "Okay, shit." Yeah,
they're holding their ground, but when Cersei finally decides, like, fine, and leaves, and the Mountain leaves too, you could just see kind of them going like, "Oh god." Like that could have gone very badly. So that was kind of a very tense scene, very interesting. I like the scenes with Tommen in King's Landing, with him both talking to Jaime about, his position, and then kind of him being ashamed of the fact that he wasn't able to do anything when the Faith Militant took his wife or his mom.
Right, yeah, exactly. So he had kind of like a confession with Cersei about all that, like really big heart to heart. I think that's all of what happens in King's Landing this episode.
That's kind of the bulk of it. So yeah, then we got when Tommen was talking to Cersei, he was basically saying that he wanted to be stronger. He lamented his weakness.
You lamented his weakness, yeah. We haven't even gotten to the good stuff this episode yet. Holy shit.
we got a little ways to go. So next up we have Pike, which we haven't been there in a while. The Pike is the Iron Islands. It's where the Greyjoys are.
Uh-huh. Yep.
We have Balon Greyjoy being just a big dick bag. The last remaining of the 5 kings from the War of 5 Kings, if you think about it. Joffrey's dead, Stannis is dead, Robb Stark is dead, and Mance Rayder's dead. So the last of the 5 kings is Balon Greyjoy.
Yep.
Being a salty bastard and an ineffectual leader as well.
Yeah, just being worthless all around, pretty much.
Yara's basically telling him, "We're great at sea. We can take on anyone at sea. Why are we trying to hold castles?"
Yeah.
This makes no sense.
It makes no sense, exactly.
And he's like, "Well, you'll do it because I tell you to." And so Yara's just like, "Oh, what the fuck, How am I going to deal with this guy?" Balon leaves. Great shot of him going on this like rickety rope bridge in the middle of a storm between 2 towers. And he sees somebody on the other end of the tower, and he's like, "Move from my path, get out of my way." But it turns out to be his brother, Euron Greyjoy, who this is the first time we've seen him.
Okay, I was wondering who this guy was like the whole time. He's like, it seems like there's a history there between these characters, and I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. And I was like worrying, like I'm forgetting stuff from like past seasons. Like I just forgot. And I'm like, oh man, I just don't know what the hell's happening.
No, that's Balon's brother, Euron. What are your thoughts seeing a new character?
Definitely interesting. Like the guy really struck me as like kind of like this insane badass, especially when he was claiming, to literally be a sea god. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, and then another person dies in this episode. Of course. Like this season is like a bloodbath, apparently.
So yeah, Euron throws Balon off the bridge. So Balon's dead. We see Yara sending his body off to the Drowned God, and they're doing the little Iron Island rituals about their funerals, whatever.
Yeah.
And while they're sending him off, Yara talks to kind of like the priest of the Drowned God on the Iron Islands and saying like, I swear on the throne that I'll find, on the salt throne that I'll find, who did this and punish him. And the guy's like, well, that's not your throne to swear on.
Yeah.
And he directly says that that's up for the King's Moot. So this is one of the few things in the book that has not yet been covered by the show. The King's Moot is already, I don't know if it's, I don't read it, so I just, from what I've heard, but I believe it's still going on in the books, the King's Moot. I'm not sure if it's settled or not, but I imagine it will be on the show. It will be settled. And it's kind of just like the ritual or whatever they go through to decide who's going to be the next leader. So it's not straight succession. It's not, well, she was his daughter and his chosen heir, so she gets the role. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works, no.
So there's something coming up called the King's Moot. I don't really know too terribly much about it because I don't read the books, except for books where the stories have completely passed. I've read some of those. But, yeah, that's it in Pike. The last of the 5 kings are dead. So the 5, War of the 5 Kings. That was like the whole setup for,
that's all
season 2.
Season 2, and now they're all dead. So,
yeah.
That happened.
I think that was also the last of the ones that, Melisandre burned when she burnt through those leeches into the fire, remember?
Yep.
And she was calling off names like Robb Stark and...
Oh, yeah. She was calling off names, yeah. Like, yeah, the usurper, Robb Stark. The usurper, Joffrey Baratheon. Like, that gave me chills. And then when those people start dropping, oh yeah. And
so that's all of them now. So we're past that point. Even Stannis, the one that she was doing it for, he's gone too. So, let's move on from Pike. Let's go to where some of the more interesting stuff is. There's 3 really places where some really interesting stuff is going on. So let's start off in Winterfell. So, we got a very, Dorne-esque experience in Winterfell this episode, similar to what happened last episode. New management. Ramsay Bolton has had enough of his father. Takes him out. But there's a few interesting things going on here because before he kills his dad, the trigger that leads him directly to killing his dad seems to be, the knowledge that now a new heir has been born. So, Roos's, wife, Walda, has had her baby and it's a boy. And, Roose basically hugs Ramsay and says, you don't have anything to worry about. You'll always be my firstborn son. Very uncharacteristic of Roose. You think he'd be kind of like giving him like a challenging look. But I guess he decided, I don't need to challenge my son anymore. He knows now or something. Right. And Ramsay immediately stabs him and kills him.
That was kind of I don't know if I was shocked at that so much. I was kind of shocked that Roose kind of let that happen to him.
Yeah, I feel about the same way. I'm kind of surprised it didn't go the other way. I mean, that's kind of what I was expecting with Dorne last episode too. Where I was like, oh man, now the Sand Snakes are in trouble, and it turned out to be the other way around. This is the same kind of thing. I'm like, ooh, Ramsay's he's in for it now. Maybe Roose is gonna cut his ties and, so something's gonna happen here and put Ramsay in a bad place. Either maybe not kill him, but lock him up or something and basically say, I don't need you anymore. Nope, that didn't happen. Roose be slayed.
Yep, like I said, bodies be dropping this episode, this season. Holy shit. But even more shocking that Roose is dead now and Ramsay is in control. Which, by the way, Ramsay's big idea is, let's go attack the Night's Watch because they're basically defenseless and blah, 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 Jon Snow. I'm I feel like this is really setting, Ramsay Snow up to like have his like big like Waterloo at the wall now, because like the Night's Watch isn't as, or they're not as weak as he's thinking. He doesn't realize that that the wildlings basically are there and everything. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah. But basically, the most shocking part wasn't like Roose Bolton getting killed. Like that was like a big moment. But even worse was like when he kills like his newborn brother and Roose's wife, or like I guess his mother, because
his stepmother.
Yeah. When he kills his stepmother and his baby brother, like, and the thing I remarked upon like that is like, of course that's what he was gonna do, because obviously, but because it's Ramsay Bolton, it's not a simple thing like he smothers the baby or something, or something. No, this is Ramsay Bolton, so this has to be as horrific and brutal as possible.
When Ramsay first has to hold the baby, it was like you could hear everybody across America going, "No!"
Yeah, right?
Do not hand him the baby.
Oh, no, do not hand him the baby. No.
I thought at that very moment, I thought he was just going to immediately like throw him into a fire or something.
No, he had something much worse planned. Throw into a fire, that's pedestrian. Come on. Seriously.
I just thought it was going to be like immediate, like, oh, thank you. Right? And it was going to be kind of like the shock of like it happening so suddenly, but.
What Ramsay had planned was like much, much worse. No, he just leads him into like the place where he has all those dogs, and then he lets the dogs eat them. They're dog meat. I think earlier.
The best fed hounds.
The best fed hounds in all of Westeros, apparently. Yeah. Because like I think earlier, like what he said in the last episode was kind of like foreshadowing too, because when his girlfriend died, like he said, "Oh, she just feed her to the hound. She's good meat." I feel like that's like kind of foreshadowing what he did like this episode too. It's like,
yeah.
That was just like, that was one of those moments where you're like, oh my god. I mean, that really underscores like how much of a monster Ramsay Snow is. And if you ever had your doubts that Ramsay is a total monster, like you thought, well, maybe he's kind of, no. he outdoes himself, like continually, to the point where like, I'm just waiting for this guy to get killed. Just go somewhere and get ganked already, please. Just do it.
So there's a little bit more to talk about in going on with the Boltons and what they're talking about, but I actually want to save that for the end because it ties into other details that are going on as well that we're going to get to.
Yeah.
But also around the Winterfell area, we did have a very brief scene, with Sansa and Brienne and Reek and Podrick. Basically, two things happened here. One, Bran told Sansa about seeing Arya, which was kind of cool because it's almost like, like you always like hope for those kind of cool like character moments where two characters bump into each other. That you're like, oh yeah, I want to see a Stark reunion or something. And even though it's not those two characters running into each other, just kind of like hearing like, oh, this character's finally hearing what's going on with that character. To some extent, of course, it's like a ways off. It was like 2 seasons ago. But just that kind of thing is just kind of cool in itself.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I was like, oh yeah, they're talking about Arya. That's cool. And, I like when, Brienne comments, she wasn't dressed like a lady.
Yeah.
And Sansa's like, yeah, she wouldn't be. So that was pretty funny. And then we had the scene where Reek decides to separate from the group.
Yeah,
so
it's to go back to the Iron Islands, which he's gonna get quite the surprise when he returns.
Yeah.
And Sansa is headed towards the wall where Jon Snow is the Lord of the Night's Watch. Or so she thinks.
That's her plan. Yeah, they're heading up north. So we talked about in the last episode that it seemed like that was where they were planning on going. And then, they encounter Bran and they didn't really say, like, are they still sticking to that? Or are they going somewhere else? Well, they are still sticking to that. They're going north. Everything is converging towards the wall right now. Everything that's like even somewhat northern is headed towards the wall, it seems. So, they're headed up to the wall. So, before we get to the wall, let's skip past the wall because the wall's where the kind of best stuff happens. Let's skip past the wall and let's go beyond the wall where Bran is.
Yes, Bran.
So Bran is, he's in the weirwood tree, getting his like visions of the past. And we get to see some characters that we haven't seen in a while since we haven't seen since season 1. We get to see Ned Stark, but a very young Ned Stark, training his brother, who is, what's his name? Benjen, the one who joined the Night's Watch, and was the head ranger that disappeared in the first season. And we still don't know where he is. But we also saw some other characters. We got to see the sword master, the one that Theon killed with the big chops.
Yeah.
We had to see a young version of him, training them. And then we got to see the kind of cool surprise was we see a girl come riding in on a horse. That is
Lyanna Stark.
Who, according to the most popular theories that we've mentioned about Jon Snow, that's Jon Snow's mom, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. Well, maybe. We don't know.
Yeah, that's according to the biggest theory right now. But that was definitely cool. We got to see her for the first time. We've always heard about her, but nothing much else beyond that. We just know that, like, Robert was absolutely obsessed with her and was so pissed off when he lost her as his wife. We know that, Ned, like, mourned her, like, more deeply even so than his brother and his dad. So we've just kind of known her through other characters. This is our first time kind of seeing the kind of character she is a bit. We had a really cool moment where she seemed to directly address Bran. Even though he's in the vision, he kind of looked like shocked, like he was taken aback. Turned out, she wasn't addressing Bran. She was directing a new character that you haven't met yet named Wilson, or no,
Willis.
Willis. Yes, Willis.
What you talking about?
So she's addressing Willis, who we find out is Hodor. It's Hodor before Hodor. It's a Hodor that can speak. So that was kind of interesting. What did you think about that?
I thought that was interesting. Like, it was like, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. There's some history there. I don't know.
I want to see, like, what happened that took away his voice from him, and why does everybody call him Hodor? Because all he says is Hodor, and so everyone calls him Hodor. But this shows that, like, Ned and others around the castle, they knew his real name. So why was he going by Hodor? Why were they calling him Hodor after this? So that it strikes up like a kind of a mystery that, like, I didn't know there even was. It's like, wait a minute, now we have this mystery. It's like we just kind of accepted at face value. Like, oh yeah, Hodor only says Hodor. And his name's Hodor, because that's all he says. But now all of a sudden we go from just kind of accepting that to like, oh, why is that?
Right.
So that was kind of interesting.
That's kind of interesting, yeah.
Besides that, that's kind of the extent of the vision we've seen so far. The coolest thing, of course, being we're going to be getting more of these scenes, more of these kind of flashbacks that we're going to be able to see through, that Bran's going to be able to see, that kind of go further back and fill in these little details that we haven't seen. There was even a scene in the trailer for next week that, was also in the trailers, for the season, where we see, like, characters in Targaryen armor, which means that's going back to, around the time of, Robert's Rebellion, I guess.
Right.
So that's going to be really cool to see. But besides that, Mira is still up north with him, hanging out by the tree. She seems to kind of not want to be there anymore. She's just kind of either hanging around, watching Bran with wide eyes, like fidgeting by the tree, or just sitting there. Like she just seems like she has no role, and she's like bored, and she's anxious, and she's sad. She lost her brother, Jojen, of course. So she seems to be kind of like doubting her place. And the child of the forest comes, sits near her, and tells her that Bran's gonna need her, and that Bran's not gonna be there forever. Which is like another interesting wrinkle, because I don't know about you, but I just kind of assumed he was gonna be kind of pulled into the tree like that guy was, the old guy.
Oh yeah, I thought he was too, but apparently not.
So that's really interesting. So we're gonna have to see, that means he's gonna travel south, I guess? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that. But that's interesting. Now let's get to the real action of the story, the real kind of exciting stuff. The Night's Watch, they're banging down on the door of Davos's room where he's keeping Jon Snow. Davos has his scene that we saw in the trailer where he says, I'm not much of a fighter. I apologize for what you're about to see, and pulls out Jon's sword. All the Night's Watch with him pull out their swords. The Night's Watch outside are trying to bust in the door. All of a sudden they hear this loud commotion at the front gate.
Yep.
And this is what you referred to earlier, Will, about, like the appearance of what's actually happening at the wall is different than what we thought, which is we see a giant kick down that door, barge in. There isn't even really a fight. The Night's Watch,
the Night's Watch, like pretty much instantly like surrenders to these. Like this one guy, like the one guy who like tries to attack, like he attacks the giant, and the giant just picks him up and like slams him against the wall, and he's dead.
Yeah, just like drags his body across, slamming it into a wall, and chucks it across the other side like it was nothing.
Like it was
and
nothing.
You just see a streak of blood.
And then everybody's like dropping their swords, like, oh my god.
And then you get like, Thorne and Alistair Thorne and Ollie, the little shits, get taken to cells. Ollie's all freaking out, going like, no. It's like,
yeah.
So that situation's resolved now, but it's not like they're headed towards peace up where they are. They got a lot of bad shit coming in both directions. But now that's kind of that initial tension is kind of resolved, Davos talks to Melisandre and, kind of is trying to perk her up and is saying like, you're the woman who showed me that miracles exist.
Uh-huh.
When you birthed out a smoke monster.
When you cause loss to happen. Yeah, he's like cheering her up and everything, and he pleads with her to see if she can resurrect Jon Snow. I don't even know where Davos gets this notion from. He just like suddenly has this notion that she could probably resurrect Jon Snow because he's seen her do some shit. And
yeah,
she says
that was a little sloppy.
That was a little sloppy, yeah.
We know that it's possible because we've seen, I can't remember his name, Baron von something.
Yeah, I don't think Davos has ever personally witnessed that. So it seemed like sloppy to me. It did seem like that notion would be like naturally occurring to Davos at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like plot. But that nitpick aside, we see Davos convinces her to give it the good college try. She even says like she doesn't know if she has that kind of power to do that. She admits that she's powerful, but not that powerful. But she rolls up her sleeves, she gets on some elbow grease and she gives it a good try.
She washes Jon's dead body and
she cleans it. Yep. And you know what? It seems to fail. Nothing happens after she repeats the chant.
That was a good thing of everybody kind of giving up on it. Like you saw her kind of like having trouble taking her hands off of him because it's like, where do I give up? And it's kind of reminiscent of if you ever watch like a medical drama and there's that moment where the doctor, call it, time of death, and it's like that moment where it's like, okay, these chest compressions, it's not going to work anymore. We have to stop, call it, And so she has that kind of a moment where she's kind of reluctant to take her hands off, even though it's almost like it didn't work, but what if I take my hands off and it would have worked? And you could see her kind of fighting that. She takes her hands off. You see, Giant Spain over there with the wildling. He's like, kind of scoffs. He's like, ugh. Kind of takes off, Davos kind of walks out. Everyone kind of walks out. And then it's just Jon Snow's corpse and Ghost.
Yeah,
Ghost just kind of laying there, chilling out, sleeping kind of at the foot. And then Ghost stirs. And all of a sudden...
oh my God.
Dun.
The least surprising plot twist of the season, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody called this at all.
It's so funny because I've seen people online going like, I knew it. I knew they were lying. Jon Snow was alive. And it's like, no, he actually was dead.
He actually was dead.
They were very careful about their language. They never said, no, Jon Snow isn't coming back. They said Jon Snow is dead. And that was true, So, but now it's not true anymore. Jon Snow is back. And that was the big cliffhanger. I'm kind of actually surprised it happened this early. I thought they were going to put that off a bit. But the fact that it happened this early, like this season I heard people complaining about the first episode of the season saying like, oh, it was nothing but setup.
It has to happen this early. I mean, what's the point of putting it off for a bit? Because then you're just not getting to Jon Snow's part of the story. Which is,
but that's, I mean, the story is moving much faster than it has in past seasons.
Right. I think it's probably because like the rumors you're hearing about them wrapping up and like they probably have like so much material still to get through. There's probably like a ton of material they still have to do. So like I think if it seems like they're moving fast through the material, it's probably just because there's so much they want to do.
Well, there's a lot that has to happen. I mean, Daenerys has to cross the Narrow Sea and like we have to bring Arya back into the picture somehow, which right now she doesn't even have any interest of going back there. Like that's not even on her horizon, but it has to happen eventually. I mean, they're not just going to have her sit out the main story, So there's all this stuff that kind of has to happen that isn't happening yet. That they seem to be racing towards in this season. So I heard a lot of people complaining about the first episode, saying like nothing happened. I actually completely disagree. I think it was the most eventful first episode of Game of Thrones season.
Yeah.
Every first episode of a Game of Thrones season is nothing but setup.
If you want to see slow setup, go watch the first half of last season. Like literally, like it seems like nothing happens at all. Yeah. Like this episode, this is the setup, but stuff is actually happening too. Like people are dying, like pretty horrifically in some cases. Jon Snow came back from the dead. There's a lot going on, even if what's going on is set up for later. Like you're seeing, these people are dying, but that's set up,
But you can see direct momentum of where things are going. Like, and we're only 2 episodes into the season.
Yeah, it's like, so this is just set up. This is like, but this is like, I don't know, so people like, I don't know what people's problem is. They suck.
But I wanted to talk about, before I'd mentioned that there were things I wanted to talk about having to do with the Boltons that was going to tie into kind of stuff happening at the Wall.
All I know is Ramsay Bolton is going. Jon Snow is going to put his sword through Ramsay Bolton at the Wall, and then that's it.
Yeah, hopefully.
No, that's not hopefully. That's definitely going to happen 100%. I am psychic. I did not read any spoilers, by the way. That's not a spoiler. That's just my prediction.
It is a spoiler. It's your psychic prediction spoiler.
Yeah.
But, so here's kind of what's going on. I mentioned last week at the end, I did kind of the same thing I'm going to do now, which was I talked about kind of the movement of where things are headed. And last week I was talking about like, it seems like everything's kind of converging towards the wall in the north. And then also converging towards Dorne in the south.
The White Walkers, they're part of it too, so like, obviously they're going to come into this story at some point. They've been teasing it. Alright, they teased it in the trailer, and they're going to be headed towards the wall. And so everything...
They're already very close.
So everything really is kind of converging on the wall, where we see like, this episode, we see Ramsay Bolton get the brilliant idea to go attack the wall because of Jon Snow. And then we get Sansa, she also gets the idea to go to the wall because of Jon Snow. And, and then, and the White Walkers are headed there, obviously. So it does seem like everything is converging upon the wall. And what you mentioned before, the only thing that's not happening that has anything to do with the wall is like, Dorne and like, well then there's the stuff in Marine too with like, well that story is actually kind of boring right now, but I'm
those
sorry.
boring dragons.
There's dragons and stuff's happening in Marine, but Daenerys is like being sent to like some like house for like widows.
She's headed to Florida.
Yeah, she's headed to Florida. I don't even know what's going on with that storyline, but anyway. But there's the other thing between, like, there's a war brewing between Dorne and the Lannisters now.
And also within King's Landing itself between the Faith Militant and Lannisters.
And then, there's still the Faith Militant to deal with too, so that's kind of a tricky situation. But that's where things are going.
So yeah, you have these kind of like wars kind of erupting in Westeros, both in the south and the north that are coming. We can see them coming. The steps are headed in that direction. Last week I'd mentioned like, okay, the wildlings are going, the wildlings are there. That's taken care of now. The wildlings are up north, they're at the wall, they're at Castle Black, they're joined in there. Jon Snow is back alive. In the preview for next week, it showed him kind of walking and everybody just kind of like shocked up at the wall, like what the fuck, So it's like they're about to have a religious experience. Seeing Jon Snow walking again. So
that's gonna be interesting, yeah.
But back to the Boltons, in the scene where Roose died, Ramsay was saying that, they didn't need the other houses in the north, cause Roose was saying we can't attack Castle Black because then the entire north will be really angry and they'll never follow us. Whether they have a Stark or not, it doesn't matter. They're going to be pissed. But in that scene, Ramsay's solution to that was, well, we don't need the other houses in the north.
No, yeah, we just need
two houses. We need the Karstarks and the Umbers, who are like the two kind of these two houses that were Stark loyalists that have the biggest armies.
Right.
And, they're like, well, if we have them, then it doesn't matter. We don't need to worry about any of the air people. And they're in the room with, Roose and Ramsay is one of the Karstarks. So, if you don't remember, the Karstarks was the one.
No, I remember. Rob killed their, one of their leaders.
Because that guy killed two Lannister
prisoners, yeah.
By the way, one of those Lannister prisoners that was killed was then recast as Tommen. So they liked him and they said, well, let's have him play Tommen now. We'll get rid of this other child actor we have. So
yeah,
that's just a little bit of insight there. That's kind of interesting, but that's really interesting because those two houses were like two of the most loyal to the Starks, and the Starks lost the support of the Karstarks. But then they mentioned the Umbers too. The Umbers were like major Stark loyalists too, and they didn't have like necessarily a moment like that where they lost their trust the Starks in the same way that the Karstarks did by losing their commander, or the head of their household. So I'm kind of wondering, I don't understand why the Karstarks would hold a grudge that long. Robb's dead. Like, his forces are dead, It's like, in their view, they probably got what they deserved and it's done, So I don't understand why they would be so like that. So my kind of prediction of what's happening is, like you said, I think Ramsay's going to his doom up towards Winterfell, but I think he thinks he's going with a strong army. And I think that a big part of that army is going to defect the second the battle starts.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think, if not the Karstarks, I think the Umbers are going to, because the Karstarks might have reason to stay with the Boltons, even though I don't necessarily understand why they would still stay with them, like, through all this, especially seeing how nuts Ramsay is.
Right.
But I think they're luring him up into a bad situation. They're kind of giving him confidence. They're kind of standing by him, not reacting at all when Ramsay kills, Ruth, all this kind of stuff. I think it's all like set up. Like, they're just collapsing the Bolton house. And this is how they're going to do it. So I really want to see when this battle comes down, but that's all the stuff that's kind of moving up towards the north. And like we said, the same thing's still happening in the south that was happening before. We haven't seen Dorne at all, but we're seeing the conflict growing between the Lannisters and the Faith Militant. And we're seeing the Mountains start to kill people. Not Faith Militant, but just period,
Right.
So we're kind of getting the idea of like, okay, something's brewing, here as well. And then, of course, you have that threat of the White Walkers, the ever-approaching threat of the White Walkers. Another prediction I'll throw out: how's Dany going to get across the sea? It seems right now that like she's going to amass a force of Dothraki again, perhaps. Otherwise, why is she there? Yeah. And if she gets a massive Dothraki, how is she going to get them across the sea? She doesn't have ships. And the Dothraki don't like ships.
It's through her dragons, of course.
She can't carry all the Dothraki on her dragons. But where the White Walkers go, they freeze everything over. And it's called the Narrow Sea for a reason.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Yep. So they freeze the Narrow Sea and she crosses it.
I'm thinking that's where it's heading.
That's interesting. I never even considered that. Nice.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it. As I mentioned in the previews for next week, we see Jon getting up. We saw him open his eyes, but we see him actually getting up. We see people kind of staring at him in shock. And we also see that Bran's going to have another big flashback scene. I think this is going to be the scene where, Ned Stark is trying to get his sister back from Dorne after she has been supposedly kidnapped by Rhaegar Targaryen. If that's the case, next episode might once and for all answer the question of who Jon Snow's parents are. It might finally give that answer. It might finally prove that theory. Ironically, do you remember 2 seasons ago, the season finale aired on Father's Day? And it ended with Tyrion killing his dad with 2 arrows.
Yep.
On Father's Day.
Yep.
So, what's next week?
Well, Mother's Day, lol. Oh, but nobody in the show has a mom. Oh, wait. Except for Cersei's a mom. Uh-oh.
Outside of that, what I'm thinking is Mother's Day means we're going to learn that Lyanna Stark is Jon's mom.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's what we're going to get for Mother's Day.
Maybe. We'll see.
So
we'll see.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see what's coming.
Definitely going to be interesting.
Yep. But that's it. So thank you everybody for watching our discussion of Game of Thrones. We're going to do these every week, so stay tuned for our next one, which we will do after Mother's Day and talk about what's going on in the 3rd episode. See if I'm right or if I'm wrong. What's going on here. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching. I was your host, Tyson, and joining me today as always was Will.
Night.
Bye.